Hi everyone, my name is Sarah Spradling and I chose to research graphic organizers in education. I chose to research about this topic because as the title reading teacher, I often use graphic organizers to help students comprehend what they are learning. This can either be with texts or what I'm teaching. So I just wanted to research not how, but if these are an effective tool when teaching students. So, what is a graphic organizer? A graphic organizer is basically a teaching tool that is used to enhance student learning. These can be a visual learning tool, such as webs, diagrams, KWR charts, many other tools that I will talk about later in this presentation. Why should you use a graphic organizer? Graphic organizers are helpful because texts and presentations are not often organized in a way that students can easily understand. Students with disabilities often have trouble identifying important information, and I don't even think this goes for students with disabilities. I think this goes for everybody. These graphic organizers give a visual representation of what students are learning, and many students are visual learners, so this really helps them visualize what they're learning. And along with the visual representation, it helps the students organize new information and they are able to connect it with prior knowledge. So some of the theories that graphic organizers I feel like fall under are associationism. Students learn through association, and students can organize new learning. So how graphic organizers reflect associationism is they can organize new learning on a familiar graphic organizer to make connections. So one thing my school does is we have a graphic organizer for fiction texts that go across the board for K through 6, and we have one for nonfiction texts, and they are modified depending on the age level. But I just kind of want to talk about that a little bit because I feel like this really follows this theory. So for example, for our fiction graphic organizer, the characters will always be red. So they have to fill in a box it says characters, and underneath it, the characters will always be red. And then when we get to setting, the setting of the story will always be in green. And this is our graphic organizer all the way across K through 6. So when students learn are reading a new fiction book and they're struggling to identify the characters, they can think about this graphic organizer and have it in front of them and think, oh, when I read this story, these were the characters because they were green. And then they can kind of associate that with the new story they're reading. So that's one way that we incorporate graphic organizers in our school, and I really just believe it follows this theory. So along with that theory, the schema theory is where students activate prior knowledge to better understand new learning. And KWR charts are a graphic organizer that are often used in classrooms that completely follow the schema theory because the K stands for what they already know. And so they're expected to write down what they already know about the topic they're going to be learning about. And so they're activating their prior knowledge. So some of the my research question was, are graphic organizers an effective learning tool? So in my first article, Kolya and James found that students retained information from a presentation better when they completed a graphic organizer. My second article found that, and I read two different articles, they did two different studies, and both of their studies found that students retained information retained information better when they completed a graphic organizer. So then my other article, Stockhoff, found that student questioning was strengthened when they used graphic organizers. And I know that's not just, I know this is more reflecting around student questioning, but the graphic organizers helping student questioning essentially helped the students learn better. So my next article found that students are more focused on important details in a text when they're given a mind map. And mind map is a graphic organizer. It's just a type of graphic organizer. And so these mind maps help the students just pick out the important details rather than the details that are not so important. And then finally, graphic organizers were found that it was found that graphic organizers language can better be taught with the use of these graphic organizers. So classroom implementation, graphic organizers can be utilized in any subject area. They can be even used in math. I know I talk a lot about reading in here, but they can be used across the board for any subject areas. All grade levels can use them. So like I said, at my school, K through 6, we all use graphic organizers for reading for nonfiction and fiction books. However, teachers should consider Piaget's cognitive development theory when they're implementing these graphic organizers, because you want the graphic organizer to be age appropriate. So for example, my kindergartners, when I'm doing characters and we're writing them in green, that's probably what we'll focus on that day is just the characters. Whereas my 6th graders, we would go into theme, characters, setting, way more detail of the text than I would just with my kindergartners. But starting them at such a young age with the graphic organizers helps them to build on it in the years. And they are so familiar with it that back to the association, they're able to associate what they've done in the past and put their new information into these organizers. So teachers should teach students how to use the graphic organizers. This is very important because you can't just give a student a graphic organizer and expect them to know what to do with it. Over time, if they're familiar with it, they will know what to do with it. But essentially, at the beginning, you need to teach them how to use the graphic organizer. And then after you've taught them how to use it, you need to scaffold to ensure that students are completing the graphic organizers correctly. And this could take a while. Like, they're not going to understand how to use a graphic organizer right away. So it might take a lot of scaffolding before they can independently complete a graphic organizer. The great thing about graphic organizers is they can be used while using many different teaching strategies. So they can be used for direct instruction, indirect instruction, cooperative learning. They can work on a partner with it. The graphic organizer can be used as an informal assessment. You could go around and just make sure that they are filling in it correctly if you have taught them how to use it. So yeah, it can really be used in many different ways. So here are the different types of graphic organizers, and these are just a few. There are many, many others. There's Venn diagrams, there's webs, KWL charts, story maps, mind maps, concept maps, sequence charts, many different types of graphic organizers that can be utilized in the classroom. So in conclusion, according to the research, graphic organizers are an effective learning tool. And there's a positive correlation between the use of graphic organizers and student learning. So all of the articles I researched found that the graphic organizers were a positive learning tool and really did help students understand new learning better. So here are my references. I had many different references. I looked at the articles, but I love Reading Rockets, so that was one of where they talk a lot about graphic organizers. So I went on there and did a lot of research. Here's just a continuum. My references continued, and that's it. So thank you so much for listening to my presentation, and I hope you guys use some graphic organizers in your classrooms.